Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and this is the Daily Brief. So, the situation on the battlefield is still very hot. 1,520 Russians off the battlefield. That's not an all-time high, but that's a very high. That's probably in the top 5 or 10% of the record. 488,000 Russians now gone. That's so in 10 days or so. It is May 16th. By May 25th, 26th, you might be at 500,000 casualties total for Russia. Eliminated personnel from the battlefield. 19 tanks, and again, replacement value for tanks is 3 to 4 per day, so that's a good day. 30 armored combat vehicles, 27 artillery pieces, 93 vehicles and fuel tanks, which is, I think, the highest I've ever seen this number. It could have been another time that it was higher, but I don't recall it. Okay, let's start with President Zelensky. He holds a meeting of the staff in Kharkiv. As of today, the situation in Kharkiv region is generally under control, and our warriors are inflicting significant losses on the occupier. However, the situation in this direction remains extremely difficult, so our units are being reinforced. But they have to be reinforced with other soldiers who were at the front somewhere else, and so that's thinning out other parts of the battlefield in order to meet the needs in Kharkiv, and that's potentially problematic. Okay, here's Andrew Perpetua's losses. It's about 2, maybe a 2.5 to 1 when you look at it, Russian losses versus Ukrainian losses. Shifting gears, yesterday we were talking about this Belbek air base attack during the night of May 14th to 15th. That's yesterday to the day before yesterday to yesterday, resulted in significant damage and casualties. Russian Astra found out at Belbek the strike destroyed 2 MiG-31 interceptor fighters, fuel and lubricants warehouse, injuring 11 Russian servicemen. Later, missile hit a S-400 Triumph air defense system near the village of Vyshevny, north of Belbek Air Base, causing the system to catch on fire, killing 2 servicemen. While the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed the air defense systems intercepted 10 ATACMS missiles over Crimea and did not report any loss or damage, local sources and military correspondents confirmed the casualties. Well, I mean, they were intercepted by hitting the ground, hitting where they were supposed to hit in some cases. Okay, that was yesterday. Now today we see this. Crimean Telegram channels report another attack on Belbek airfield in occupied Crimea. Reportedly, a fuel warehouse was hit and a fire started. And a little bit more, according to some reports by Crimean Telegram channels, last night there was a direct, now this is not 2 nights ago, this is last night, like, oops, we did it again. There was a direct hit on a main Russian warehouse of missile and artillery weapons, where most of the missiles for the Su-27, Su-30, and MiG-31 aircraft were stored in occupied Crimea. They're waiting for official information, but if that's true, that's phenomenal. Okay. Russian media report a drone attack on military enterprise in Russia's Tula. Reportedly, the target of the attack was most likely the production facilities of the state-owned enterprise of the Russian defense complex Basalt. It is a key enterprise in Russia for the production of ammunition and supply of weapons for Russian ground forces, Air Force, and Navy. So the first attack was in Crimea last night, and this attack was actually in Russia proper. Being in Russia proper is really interesting because of this statement, which signaled kind of a change from Blinken. We are not encouraging or enabling strikes outside of Ukraine, but ultimately, listen to this, ultimately, Ukraine has to make decisions itself on how it's going to conduct this war in defense of its freedom and sovereignty. Whoa, that's different. That's significantly different than what he was saying before about do not hit inside Russia proper. So the question was, are we seeing a shift here? And I think we may very well be. This was also carried in Interfax Ukraine. Secretary of State said that they hadn't encouraged or supported strikes outside Ukraine, but ultimately Ukraine must make its own decisions. How about that? So I think they're kind of loosening their grip on that policy. Okay, next story. U.S. will send $2 billion in aid as Russian troops advance. The only thing I want to point out here is that, so this is a new $2 billion aid package, part of the $61 billion. And okay, so Blinken said the U.S. is rushing ammunition, armored vehicles, missiles, air defense to get them to the front lines. But what does rushing mean when we're talking about actually moving ammunition and other military vehicles. It takes a while, and they're still en route to get things there. It's gotten to a few places in the front, but is it making the difference that it needs to be making? And that timely difference is costing lives. Okay, let's switch our gears to what's going on in China. Putin is meeting with Xi today, and this was an article from yesterday. I just couldn't really share because we just ran out of time with other things, but it didn't really say a lot except for what Putin was saying about the visit ahead of time. And so what you really want to focus on later on today is what does Xi say? So Vladimir Putin claimed that he backed China's plan for resolving the war in Ukraine. Of course he does, because it really isn't costing Russia anything. China last year issued a 12-point statement outlining general principles for ending the war, including abandoning the Cold War mentality and resuming peace talks. Of course, that same plan also says respecting the sovereignty of all nations and countries, but they'll read that the way that they want to read that. It's not going to really affect Russia. We have never refused to negotiate, Putin said. We are seeking a comprehensive, sustainable, and just settlement of this conflict through peaceful means. We are open to dialogue on Ukraine, but such negotiations must take into account the interest of all countries involved in the conflict, including ours. But it doesn't necessarily take into account the interest of Ukraine, because they won't even talk about handing back the territories that Ukraine had stolen from them by Russia in both 2014 and in 2022. Okay, Putin hails China's genuine desire to help resolve the Ukraine war. Again, this is before they met. Russian President Vladimir Putin hailed Beijing's genuine desire to help resolve the Ukraine war in an interview with Chinese state media. Putin arrives in Beijing on Thursday to meet his dear friend. We commend China's approaches to resolving the crisis in Ukraine. Beijing is well aware of its root causes and global geopolitical significance. I think that's a fair statement, but he means something different than what it sounds like. Putin said, referring to his 12-point position paper published by China in February of 2023 on reaching a political settlement. The ideas and proposals contained in the document show a genuine desire of our Chinese friends to help stabilize the situation. Look, China doesn't really want to back your play, but they really don't want to help the West even more. Okay, let's shift gears over to what's going on in Georgia. So in Georgia, they've had this bill that was finally passed through its third reading. It's going to the president to be signed. It'll be vetoed, but it'll then be overridden. And tens of thousands of people have shown up to protest. So this is Pravda.ru, so the Russian Pravda, and their view of this. Georgia passes foreign agents law to prevent Ukraine-style coup in October. Well, it's October. October is Georgian elections, and they're saying the West is going to have a coup because the U.S. is going to make sure that they're, monkeying with it to be like U.S.-like. Okay, Georgia is making every effort not to become another Ukraine in USA's hands. According to the Prime Minister, Ivanishvili will not hold any meetings under blackmail and threats of sanctions. What's he talking about? Blackmail concerns Georgia's accession to the EU, while sanctions refer to $2 billion in frozen accounts. Okay, so the EU is saying, look, if you're doing this, it's pushing you further from the EU, and that's blackmail. Okay, we will not obey any external directives, nor will we give in to demands of global war party. Kobakidze said, adding that 60% of the population of Georgia supported the foreign agents law. Now, that's improbable that 60% support that law when 80% of the population want to join the EU, but that's what Russia's Pravda says. Okay, let's look at this. Speaker of the Georgian parliament accused the foreign ministers of Iceland, Lithuania, and Estonia, who took part in a rally against the law on foreign agents in Tbilisi, of attempting to overthrow the Georgian government. Well, that's not exactly what it is. They're trying to not pass this law, but that's not overthrowing the government unless you believe, like this says, that it's the West that's contaminating Georgia and trying to overturn the government with this foreign money, and that's what they're trying to establish. Okay, let's turn our attention to Slovakia. Very briefly, I'm going to talk about this in an entirely separate video, but Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico was shot multiple times yesterday. He's in critical but stable condition at this point. Okay, that's what we know, and I'll talk about why it happened and what we know at right now in the next video. Now, there's another threat as well. A new government coalition has been formed in the Netherlands, which includes Geert Wilder's far-right party, the Freedom Party. Wilders opposed military aid to Ukraine, but in the draft agreement, it's written that, quote, the Netherlands continues to support Ukraine politically, militarily, financially, and morally against Russian aggression. We'll see how long that holds or how that plays out in the months ahead. Andrew Perpetua, these new Pepsi ads are wild. That's pretty impressive to jerry-rig a Pepsi can in that way. So I've been following JakeBroe's campaign. He's been ratcheting it up and ratcheting it up. So yesterday afternoon, it was at 789,000. Yesterday evening, his donations were up to 854,000 when I last looked at it. And so let's see where we are now. He's now moved it to $1 million campaign. And right now he's on the cusp of $900,000, $898,000. And it is not quite 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I wonder if we'll see $1 million today or if it'll be tomorrow. Remember, he started this only last Saturday. And so within less than a week, he's raised $900,000 for support to Ukraine. And that's absolutely fabulous. So last, I want to leave you with Darth Putin, who says Russia became the world's largest country by peacefully defending itself in other people's countries. Okay, thank you, my friends. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. I'd appreciate it if you would hit the like. That will spread this message. Thank you to my patrons, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.